speaking of how things impact, we got our special guest, Mr. John Heaston, in the house. Good morning, good
Hey.
morning, good morning to you, my brother. How you doing?
Doing all right. Good morning.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
Looking
Oh man, thanks for joining us. Thanks for
looking
joining
good.
us.
You got a crisp white shirt on this morning. You look like you're ready for business.
That's right.
Light and looking right.
Monday morning.
Indeed, indeed,
Ain't no case
indeed.
of the Mondays here, huh, John? I love it.
Yeah.
How you been, man? Health wise, how's everything going?
Yeah, yeah. Let's start there.
Not too bad, right? Like I'm able to travel. I'm able to do a bunch of things, but it's a chronic kind of thing. So there's lots of pills, and has its moments for sure.
Yeah,
But no, happy to be able to be out and about and have an immune system that can handle that.
that's good, man. Yeah,
Okay.
it's always a pleasure
Okay.
to see you out and about for sure. So I know you went through a lot last year, and every time we see you, we're like, oh man, it's like a relief. So I really, really appreciate you.
Like the pandemic never ended for me for a minute, right? Like right as everybody's going out, I had to stay in longer. I was like the kid looking out the window. The other kids are out playing.
Peeking through the blinds.
We probably should have all stayed in a a little longer.
Yeah, yeah. Looking back, looking back.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. For those of you that are in the chat and the Ghost listeners don't know, of course, this is the infamous John Heaston, who is the founder of so many different things in the city. It's
Man.
ridiculous. But we're talking specifically today about the Reader in El Perico. This is something else. There was an announcement that just came out that you put out a few days ago saying that you were going to shut it down after 30 years. 30 years printing. Is that?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
And it was the news that shook that reverberated all through Omaha in a big, big way. I've been on the phone nonstop all day, every day on this subject because it's like the Reader is such an institution and such a cornerstone of especially alternative news, nonprofit news. In just a short time, man, from Freedom Summer, from COVID on, how quickly you
Mm-hmm.
guys have changed the landscape with going from news about culture to big issues like the Disinvested series, bringing on writers that have dug deep, that have you've been battling all the other news outlets, man, with deep dive, hard hitting news, and that's I feel like a lot of what we've all built has been centered around that. So sad to see you go. First of all, got to get your comments on that. Tell us what happened. What's going on? Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, I kind of put it out there in that letter. It's definitely a personal decision of where I want my life to be, where I think it needs to be. I
Mm.
think that there's actually a more vibrant local media system going on right now. This
Mm,
show, is perfect proof of that. And so, yeah, I just had to kind of slow things down. I'm still going to be, doing some work. We have an agency side. I'll be keeping some of that work and also hoping to do more media consulting work. Um, uh,
yeah,
helping with First Guy if and where I can,
love it.
and some of the other great media sources, of course, Mundo. I'd spent some time in the Star in the past. And so I try not to look at this so much as, going to be a big loss. Is maybe it creates
Mm.
some space and room for some other good things going on to even get a little bit more space.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Very optimistic outlook. We were definitely kind of feeling a little more doom and gloom once once we heard the news. So it's good to hear that
Yeah,
perspective
it kind of comes off
from
that
you.
way. And I mean, there are some conversations or people have reached out that have said, hey, maybe there's something that could happen. And,
Mm.
I'm having some of those conversations.
Okay.
I just didn't feel like, I've always felt like I'm kind of a steward of this thing in general, right? All of this creative talent, just trying to stitch it together so that we could put something out, and to keep that, running over all of this time. But if it's the right group, the right people, looks like it's got the right mix, I'm totally game, right? I'm not like, I've got to go deal with things and I got to shut this down because it can't be mine anymore. Or I can't do, all this other stuff that I want to do with it. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. If nothing happens, it's okay because there's a lot of other great things going on, and hopefully things kind of flow that way and plug in that way. And I'll still hope to be here, cheering everybody on and helping out in all kinds of different ways than maybe I would have been contributing, that I'm doing right now.
I love that. Love that. So first off, because everybody has been calling me trying to be like, hey, can we plug me in with John? We need to figure out how we can save the paper. Everybody's on that tip. And at first, it sounded like that you didn't really want it. It was kind of decision made, but now you're saying it wasn't decision made. It was there if there's the right people that in the right circumstances, you're willing to talk about that. And so tell us, what was the so what's the I'm feeling like then there has not been the right people to pass that along to, and you don't want it to get into the wrong hands. Is what we were kind of have been explaining to people. Can you reiterate that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I knew kind of where I needed to be at, I could have tried really, working my way through the community and talking to people and seeing, if there was an interest and who could do it. For better or for worse, it's kind of been built around my ability to drive revenues, which is, something I'm decent at. And we did that intentionally, right? Because that allowed us to kind of grow our journalism resources, earlier and sooner. And I have no regrets about any of that. But I think it is going to take a group that can appreciate the creative, that can appreciate the importance of journalism, and is going to need the flow or the stash to kind of float it and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty fast changing landscape. I think we're just seeing the very tip of a lot of innovation for what's happening. You're all streaming in video, and you're doing more video projects, and being able to kind of master the interplay of that shorter form, video, even longer form video, with the written word, with the social, with the events, with the community outreach, right? I mean, there's so many possibilities. And so when I've kind of figured out where I was at and, realized I couldn't help lead that charge like I once could, it seemed better to me to kind of just put it out there and let people know, where I was at and the personal decision I had to make. But in that announcement, I did say, hey, there's an opportunity here, for the right folks.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was always my intention. It just felt better to kind of take the Band-Aid off and just kind of put it out like it was, instead of trying to side talk, work some background, and then maybe things kind of started getting out. It has nothing to do with any particular story. I'm looking at chat.
We encourage you not to do that because you can get caught up looking at the chat. It's always
Okay.
healthy.
Okay, good.
We'll come back and address address some of the things in the chat. As a matter of fact, in the chat, people are already really giving you some flowers, man. Just talking about things like Sean McCarthy's in the chat right now saying, thank you for giving me my first post college writing opportunity. Keep your health at the top of your priorities for sure. Same with me, man. I think the first time I ever was published was the Reader, the article in the Reader. Now that I think about it, Kimber Snipes in the chat says the Reader is the first outlet to hue light neighborhood associations and alliances in a consistent way, and I'm grateful. Bridget had even reached out a couple of months ago wanting to discuss NUSA. That's everybody's going to have these stories, man. Everybody has a story about how the Reader affected things and what El Perico did to unite the sides and all the things. So tell us about, what do you think about the holes now? If the Reader is the Reader shutting down, right off the top of my head, first of all, I'm feeling like there's not really an arts magazine. There's not, or arts paper, or a lot of art news, because even though you guys started doing some deep dive stuff. You guys also really cover the arts in a really comprehensive way. Do you feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's a hole that now is there because of the reader being gone?
That was kind of my anticipation. I think that the watchdog, investigative, accountability, enterprise journalism that Chris Bowling and Bridget Fogarty have really just been nailing. Hopefully, they stay as journalists here in town somewhere,
Yeah.
somehow, right?
Right.
And definitely kind of working on hoping that they want to do that and supporting that decision and trying to help make that possible, right? Like that's a super high priority for me. The biggest, priority for me really is trying to make sure that this great team and our people are, into whatever their next jam needs to be, right? Carla the Velasquez, the associate publisher at El Perico, has that journalism, but also that sales and kind of marketing kind of mix, right? Like kind of that true publisher, having a foot in both camps. Tylonda Sanders, runs some pretty intense account management for a pretty wide range of clients and has kind of been, point person on all of the readers' advertising. So helping gather all of that together, sell it, put it together, right? So there's some really good folks. And I want to make sure that that they're land somewhere good, right? So I mean, I think that's kind of one of my most immediate priorities. In terms of that said, right, like cultural coverage, because that's a whole nother team for us of just like dedicated freelancers, right? From Ryan Sirik in film, Sarah Locke, covering food, BJ on the blues scene,
Mark Manor on the music now.
Mark Manor, right? Like got him back finally after I don't know how long, riding with us. I hope there's something, and I'm actually hearing some rumblings, some people, or at least I can say for sure one person has kind of dropped well, maybe there's room for a new culture thing here. And I'm like, any way I can help, right? It doesn't have to be about what we did, in the past. It's all about what we can do moving forward. And so I hope that folks come together around that, right? There's some pretty strong artist collectives going on around here, right? From Culture House to Benson First Friday to, what's happening on Benton Street. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm leaving so much out. But maybe that's kind of what the next evolution of some of this is, instead of, waiting for the traditional media outlet, which as alternative as the Reader was, still operated as a traditional media outlet in a lot of ways. For a collective of artists to come together around, constructive criticism and, just getting the word out and sparking those conversations, like great art and culture always does. So I think I'm hopeful that we'll see some new stuff too.
That's what's
Even
up,
if
man.
old stuff kind of maybe hangs on in some way or takes off and thrives in some way.
Yeah.
Right? It's the diversity of that system that's going to matter the most.
Got it. Have you been in talks with Flatwater about absorbing some of the reporters, or you have any idea where some of these people are going that you're trying to help get into stay into journalism first of all?
Well, I have mad respect for what those guys are doing, and that's definitely kind of a great high energy fit. And our groups have already been collaborating and talking, right, quite a bit. So that would be definitely one of the most hopeful, obvious choices. We've talked a little bit about it. This all kind of dropped, last week
Very
because it
suddenly.
was something that, kind of sparked in me right around the year anniversary of my transplant, which was very late April. And then that was like a super heavy thought because I'd never ever entertained that thought in like 30 years. And, it's kind of like, this has been all I've done. It's kind of, it's all I know. Needed to talk with family, talk with people, people who've been mentors to me in business and in journalism and colleagues like that. And just, I did a lot of grieving kind of over that month of thinking about it, right? To try and get my head right where I could announce it and see how we can make this as good a moment as we can be, right? And make it as a Listen, sometimes, I mean, I had this down for a really long time and would still love to think I had it down, and it's never been work for me. I just really enjoy what I do, so I never think about, oh, I got to go do this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but man, life can turn on you sometimes, and you got to refocus.
Yeah, yeah. One of the definitely sure things of life is change. So, I will say as we first when we first heard the news, it was definitely some gloom and some worry. But I am excited to hear the optimism in your voice and really the hopes that you have for the future of journalism in Omaha. Because again, we definitely feel like this was a blow. But you're saying I guess I'm kind of curious because I hear what you're saying, but not fully seeing it. Like, there's us, there's the star. Like, as far as the future of journalism in Omaha, what do you see?
Good question.
I,
Good question. Good
I,
question.
I, I would see more collaboration around the revenue models, right? So trying to
Mm,
get to sustainability,
Mm.
mm-hmm.
right? Like, I think that's specifically something I can try and lean into or help with or share.
And does that include nonprofit dollars as well? Is that a thing now that's a sustainable income that
Model.
we count as as being towards sustainability?
You should. It's been pretty sustainable, but it kind of scares me, right? That it would only lean on that or lean on that too much,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really, really important we find a diverse revenue plan, right? Which is something we were
Oh,
figuring out with the agency work that we've been doing.
Hmm.
But it could be stuff like that, right? I mean, like what we had started before, you guys kind of were taking off again in this last iteration. But what's that multimedia relationship look like,
Yeah.
between two media entities? And,
mm,
that's when we were working, for instance, when we were working together and you were handling all of that, social creation for us and the multimedia creation for us, right?
Right.
I think we need to get real thoughtful about that, because I think that there'll be more philanthropy for local media and journalism. I think we're just at kind of the start of that wave, um, but it's going to ebb and flow, and
mm-hmm.
we got to take that wave to see how far and what kind of infrastructure and foundation we can build, so when it comes out, we're still solid and we're still going. I think that there will be, so that's the revenue side. I think there'll also be a lot more opportunities for um, uh, collaborative journalism, right? Reporters that are working across, individual resources, but also shared resources, right?
Mm.
Reporters that might have specific beats, whether it's systemic inequities, criminal justice, education, but, are working in a tight flow, but high level, there's kind of a media collaboration and community engagement kind of collaboration, to help drive, that coverage, of course, get it out. And, people are supported and recognized for helping to get the word out, right? I think that's it's particularly important for things like, I'm sure you guys see it all the time, right? Like, hey, you got to get the word out to our audience, and
Right.
hey, we also have underwriting too. There's other opportunities we can, work on here, and you shouldn't have to ask for that, right? That should people should be coming
Mm-hmm.
and saying, "Hey, I want to underwrite that because I like that coverage, and here's my stuff." Dollars shouldn't mean ever coverage ever, but it should be a kind of a deeper relationship. And then the third thing I'd say, like future local media, is going to be citizen journalism, right? It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
documenters. It's why I believe in documenters. It's why I'm hoping this gives me a little bit of space to support that program a little bit better.
Mm.
And I think documenters is just the start of an experiment of how we harness the community's ability to capture and share news and inform it.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I'm very, very excited about that. As far as citizen journalism and the future of that, and I do think that it's kind of a revolutionary idea as far as journalism. is concerned. There's been historically a certain perspective of journalism and what you have to go through to be a journalist. But it is, it's a right. It's the First Amendment as far as the freedom of speech and press. And to that point, as far as funding, this is an idea that I've kind of been toying with. But do you see a possibility or a future in possible state funding or government dollars towards again, this is a amendment, this is a right, this is a First Amendment right, something that is needed and not necessarily, as we've seen, bill that is self-sustainable. I mean, there's only so many members that can pay for a paper, and there's only so much even ad space that a paper could even have or a website could even have. There's only so much limits to what news outlets can, how they can fund themselves. So what are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
I don't know how crazy it would be for us to learn from every, advanced industrial nation where there's some form of, state support for media. Uh, Knowing where I live, my hopes are not high.
Right. There's some
But,
concern.
for instance, there's a guy in New Jersey, a guy by the name of Chris Daggett, who has created a program with the state legislature in New Jersey to fund journalism innovation.
Mm.
They've got it's state funded. They got a community, kind of a community based board that they're working on. This whole thing's getting infrastructure, but they're distributing, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like $5-10 million, or maybe it's $2 million. It's millions
Mm.
Wow.
every year right now to journalists, right? And the state
Mm.
of California just did a program, or this last legislature passed a program. I want to say it's 25 million. It's going to be going to journalists, and it's managed by the Cal Berkeley Journalism Department.
Mm.
I've often kind of thought that maybe the food and restaurant tax someday could support libraries and public information. And
Mm.
maybe we, as library card holders, which if you live in the boundaries you can be, right? No other requirement. You just got to live. Then maybe every year you could say, hey, I want a slice of that fund to go to these three media outlets,
Wow.
right? And so then it's kind of tied in with getting people plugged into the library. I think the connections between libraries and local media is another hugely untapped potential.
Man, agreed. Agreed.
And so, yeah, I mean, these are all emerging models that I think could be pretty exciting. And we have a
Two
shot.
Nice.
two things are striking me right now about what you're talking about. Number one, you've been a person that has very inventive mind and spirit and adventurous when it comes to figuring out what needs to be done to get that paper printed all this time. Even like with the forming of like Omaha Loco,
Yeah.
all the businesses and all the things that you've done all this time, uh, y- super inventive, man. Like you always got my mind sparking about what we can do and how we can enhance things, especially when it comes to like this, the financial model. You're right. There's so many good ideas out there. And the second thing that's hitting me too is remembering about your connection to a news in the rest of the country, weekly papers, organizations. You have examples which are in the form of solutions to us from all these different states and all these different cities that have all this stuff going on. You've been doing that for a long time. Just to let people know, it's 8:10 right now. You're well into the second hour of First Guy Omaha in the morning.
In the morning.
Yeah, we got
Yeah.
John Heaston in the house, man, the legendary, the living legend, brother Heaston in the house, and we're talking about these things and actually feeling really good about the things that you're talking about because it
Yeah,
sounds
man.
to me like even though the paper's going away right now, and that's not even 100%, there's all the infrastructure that underneath that has built this community of news that still exists and that really excited about the fact that your health is better and you feel more energetic, ready to help in different areas that need attention, like the documenters program, like helping out with some of these ideas of getting to sustainability. I'm actually kind of excited about the fact that you're going to have some time to free up to use that creative mind of yours to go in here and really reshape what's happening with the news.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about that. We've been asking people in the chat, how do you get your news? We're trying to figure out really like how do we consume. One of the things that we came up with was that news comes into us very fragmented all the time now. We see something on TikTok or we see something on Facebook, and then we kind of do this real natural thing of going to our trusted source to see if that thing is true, and then we find another fragment that says that that's true or not. And it's really interesting, like how we're forming our opinions. How do you, in your experience, and especially like with your connections all around the country, all these different cities, how do you see? What's your vision on how people get their news? Mostly, is there different categories when it comes, because of weekly papers and stuff like that? Is there different categories? Do you think it's going all digital? What's your viewpoint on how people get news these days?
I think it's really scattered is how they get it now.
Scattered.
Because I don't think we've really fine-tuned a strong narrative model. I would say we fine-tuned overall towards maximizing eyeballs and impressions and the advertising dollars that we can get. The truth is that still to this day, and I don't see it changing too fast, it's a lot easier to make revenues on a print product than it is even really on a digital product. Unless you have some very specific kind of sponsor relationships established that are willing to go pretty big for you. When you do digital advertising, you are dumped into a global marketplace that right now values your content at maybe $1 to $2 to $3 per 1,000 impressions. Right now, I could go into this, and you could, I could, but the long story short is that major advertisers and brands are spending 12 to 15 to maybe more per $1,000 of impression. But the digital ad market is very murky. It's got a lot of players, and there's a whole, I think hundreds that are just taking a slice out. So that by the time it gets to the actual content producer, right, the local media, it's a $1 to $2, right? It's that big of an arbitrage is going on. Wow. And there's good folks that are working on trying to narrow that. And there's actually a dude from Omaha that's kind of in the front of a bunch of that. So I think that's going to be kind of an evolving place. But there's also something to be said for being in print, being out there where people run into it. The whole thing about digital is unless you pay, it's hard to insert yourself into other conversations. When you put a paper out on the street, or as you walk into a grocery store, you're stepping into a natural flow, and you're giving a chance of discovery, right? People can kind of discover something. That's a lot harder on online without paying social media or really building your email list and having to do all those kinds of things, which are all, I think, important. But what I do think will really improve is the kind of the transition points. So it'll be much more seamless between online, offline, online, even between the channels, and more tailored to each segment, more tailored to even each person.
Right.
And I think that's where it'll go. And it's not always going to be the original stuff that you're doing all the time. It's going to be the stuff that's out there that you're connecting. Right. And that's really got to be, your role, because you see, you talk to a lot of people, you have a sense, you have a good network. When you hear something, where you can go to kind of get it double checked that just the average person can't. And that's going to be one of the biggest roles, I think, of local media in the future is, if we're talking about citizen journalism, yes, you want to be able to train people on authorship and, showing authority. Why would I trust this viewpoint? Why would I trust this video? And I think, in fact, it's technology that's going to drive that, right? Because there'll be so much fakes, going out there that people are going to start demanding it. They're not going to just trust something that comes from, anonymous. And so it's going to be important, those networks. One of the things that made me really kind of go like, oh, with this decision was somebody told me that they took a pretty big civic action because they felt like having something like the Reader around and El Perico around gave them cover or gave them permission, right? Like
Mm.
if things, they were stepping into kind of a big civic thing, and that there was something around that might have their backs. Is kind of how I understood it.
Wow.
And so that's really important. It's like not something you ever can measure, but I think it's something that's very real. And I think to that though is that it's not just us, right? First guy would have your back. Star, Mundo, Flatwater, all of them would. They might not, run up on issues like we do, but everybody's got a different role, and that role can expand and shift.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I think that it'll be a lot more dynamic. It'll be a lot more interactive. I think what you're doing is kind of on the front of it, right? Streaming video.
Yeah. But I think you hit a good point, especially now that we talk about AI a lot more, and this came up in a conversation that I had recently about I think there's a song with like Tupac and Biggie rapping over some Drake beat or something, and it's a song they never made, but the point is it's going to be a point where people can't really trust what they see and what they hear fully. So how do you know the information, or even the video or the audio that you might be seeing isn't AI generated, and it is accurate? I think that's very, I don't have the answer, or not even really formulating a question, but I think you hit a very important point as far as the authenticity of the information that we're getting in this age of information, and even in people, as Paul's saying, people getting information in so many fragmented ways. How will you verify things moving forward?
Well, that's what we were actually just talking about this recently when we brought this up before, and I always felt like that's the future of what we're doing too. Like we can be that source that they go and check. They go actually check with actual journalists who've done the deep dive, done the interviews, and all those things in order to really get the story, because we're never going to get in front of every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a phone that it can go out and just say this is what's happening and this is my opinion on it. That's going to happen first. We're never going to, breaking news is done. We're never going to like jump in front of that. But what we can do is come behind it and be able to be that trusted source that can verify that stuff. Is that? Mm-hmm. I see you shaking your head, John. Is that kind of what you're talking about here?
Yeah, and just having the tools to be able to look at it and evaluate it. I think that's already happening now. For a younger digital user, people more my age were like, if it's online, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, Wikipedia said so. Google said so. Right.
Right. Why would they lie?
Yeah. Right. But I think the more you're in it, the smarter you get with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot more of that, because you're right. You're never going to be able to stop it. It's going to flood the zone. So the only thing that can really happen is people can learn how to sort it, and so they can know that there are some pretty trusted networks they can go to that if it reaches a certain level, it will get sorted.
Right. Love it, man. Speaking of getting sorted, I want to switch gears real quick. We have a special guest waiting in the wings. We're going to bring her on in a few minutes, but I wanted to get with you on a couple things. Von Chapman in the chat a little earlier said the impact the reader had on me was from John's Aunt Maggie, who was as intuitive as John is in the community. So
my first investor. Well, my second investor after my parents, I guess.
Wow. So family who has been surrounding you and helping you all this time. For those of you that don't know, you've been very open about what's been going on with you physically and with your illness and the journey that you've been taking. And it got real hairy last year. Thought we might lose you. We have a very, very big opportunity right now that you've been doing all this work this whole year and you've recovered, and you still have your challenges, but you're here. And so I'm not going to pass this opportunity up. We're going to try to have you on like pretty regularly, talking about some of the things you've been doing all this time. You have an opportunity to talk about your legendary status of things that you have done in this community. You have an opportunity to talk about them now that would have, if we'd have lost you, it'd come up a different kind of way. So you're here and we're going to take advantage this time around.
Give them flowers while you can smell them.
Man, and you gotta let people know, just to let everybody who's listening know, this brother has been instrumental in what it is that we're doing. He's had our back, and not just when we talk about this stuff. John's been a friend, and he's like a brother, and I'm so happy that you were bold enough to take the journey you did to get well. I'm glad that you're back,
Yeah,
and
man.
we're not going to waste no more time. It's
All right.
it's time for us to talk about the things that you do and the things you're planning on doing and helping out with as well, like going forward, because I really feel like you're on the forefront of figuring out what's going on in the news, not just here in Omaha, but in the country,
Yeah, man.
because of the things that you do in all these different cities in the length of time you've been in it. And that with that innovative mind and that entrepreneurial mind that you have to figure out how to make it work. Most people don't have both of those things. And I think you're one of the people that I idolize in that fact when I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to figure out how to sustain a creative endeavor. I think about what would John think on this subject? How would he figure this out? We start a whole new business. Let's start baking cookies so we can make sure that this magazine gets printed. Like,
Man.
whatever we got to do. You know what I'm saying?
Just don't do a restaurant delivery app.
Hey,
You got to come pick them up.
it was good while it lasted, bro. It was good while it lasted. I definitely took advantage. But and even that, that it was an event. It was a venture it was a temporary venture, but it didn't even employed people.
Yeah.
I mean, it did a lot for when it was up and running for the time being. But it's just and the biggest thing for me is it just showed me how to think outside the box when it comes to what it is that you're trying to do and how to make it happen. You got to think outside the box. Our next guest, Jade Rogers, is coming on. She's another one. Thinks outside
She's
the box.
great. She's all over the place now.
All
Yeah.
over the place,
Making
man.
moves.
For real.
National.
Yep.
That's so cool to see.
So, man, definitely going to have you back, and we'll definitely talk some more. And before you go, though, I just wanted to bring that out there. You got people in the chat that knew your family, knows your aunt. Your family has been very instrumental in helping you out. Your family and your friends. I've heard you have some speeches and some touching moments talking about your friends and family, and just I don't know how much you want to say about it, but just like. I always love to hear words of encouragement about how we need to live alive with one another and really cherish the family time and how important family and deep friends are in order to just even survive these days.
Oh, man.
Anything you want to say something on that subject there without don't start crying on me now because I'll start crying and then we'll just be on here crying.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Everybody got ugly face on the chat on the live stream.
Well, no. I think we all help each other bloom, right? That's what we're trying to do. And so, that sunshine, that water, that the right soil, it takes tendon from all of us. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot more fun that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It don't feel like work.
Yeah.
It's like that.
That part.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, fellas.
Very much so. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you back soon, and let's go get some food and hang out a little bit.
Sounds good. Looking
Yeah,
forward
man.
to it.
Yeah, man. Looking good, John. Thanks for coming to speak to us.
All right. We'll talk to you.
Peace.
Peace.
My man, John Heaston. We'll take a quick break. Come right back, man, and bring Jade Rogers in, man. I'm so happy to talk to her about some things she's got coming up. So definitely stay tuned. Once again, you're listening to First Guy Omaha Radio. First Guy Omaha in the morning.
In the morning.
Yeah, Paul B. the Dub, Buddy the God. All of
man.
you, Chad Chimers, Ghost listeners, radio listeners, readers, El Perico readers.
Oh, y'all.
All y'all. Be right back.